All right, Ag Mechanics, it is Wednesday, November the 4th. So the past two class periods, we have gone over some construction terms. The biggest part of this is just learning the terminology and the order in which some things are completed. So throughout class, we have covered a couple different things. We went over some different terms and materials. So after your foundation is dug and you go to build your house, the sills are going to be the largest piece of lumber that is put down. They're the very first thing that gets put down on your house. Sills are supported with these things called joists. So joists are going to run horizontally in between your sills. They're going to support those sills and keep them from warping, bending, moving, twisting. All right, so they have a very important process. So the joists are going to be attached to the top of the sills. Then afterwards, we put this thing called down a subfloor, which is you put plywood down over top of them. It gives you an area to walk on. And then on top of your plywood, we have this thing called a sole plate, which goes around the outside edge. And that is the bottom of our wall segment. The top plate is going to be located at the very top of our wall. So on your wall segment, bottom is going to be a sole plate, and then you're going to have studs that run vertically in between that and the top plate. So studs, vertical framing boards. And then finally, you're going to have rafters, and they get attached on top of your top plate. How steep your roof is called pitch. Most framing lumber is 2 inches thick, whether or not it's 2x4, 2x6, 2x8, 2x10. They're all 2 inches thick. Rafter lengths and angles are pretty simple as far as finding the math for them. Now, when you go to construct these, you can use a framing square. A framing square has the rise and the run of your actual rafter, okay? And that's what they're used for. The rise is going to be on the tongue, and the run is going to be on the blade. If you don't have a framing square available, you can use a speed square or a stepping method in order to cut those correctly. So rafter length, we have 3 different dimensions. We have a unit length, a tail or an overhang, and then a total length. The unit length is where the rafter comes down and it's even with the top of your house. The overhang is how far it sticks out over the side, and when you add both of those together, you get the total length. So we had just a couple of 2 basic problems. If you have a unit length of 128 and a 12-inch overhang, you simply add 128 and 12 and you come up with 140. On the flip side of that, if you're looking for the unit length and it tells you the total is 196 and includes a 14-inch overhang, you subtract the total from the overhang. So 196 minus 14 gives you 182. Okay. So procedures. So the only difference really between a rafter and a rafter is when you are going to build those top portions, and you can kind of see it on the top of this storage building here, right? So we have our material that's holding on our roof. So those are rafters. You can build them all on site, or if you purchase them and have them shipped in or delivered, brought in, whatever you want to call it, then that would be called technically a truss, right? Because everything is 100% complete. You take it off the truck, you put it on top of your building. The 2 methods of framing, we have platform and balloon. Platform is the way most buildings are made. It's when you do the sills or a concrete slab, right? And then you have your subfloor. And what that does is give you an area to stand on. Balloon framing is the complete opposite. You're building a structure and you don't have any area to stand. Now, whenever you're putting these things together, you want to use metal anchors. What that does is reduces splitting when the wood is toe-nailed. Toe-nailing is when you drive that nail in on a 45-degree angle. And then some metal anchors that you can use. Hurricane joists are going to be used along the roof, along the rafters. They're going to keep that whole thing from moving and blowing off. And then joist hangers, we use joist hangers when you're connecting joist, obviously joist hangers. And then if for some reason you didn't use a joist hanger, you have to make these things called ledgers, which is basically a piece of wood in order for that joist to sit in. And what that does is give it more support. Whenever you have a window, right, you can have studs above or below your window. They're really short. Those are called cripple studs. Trimmer studs are going to be beside your door or your window. Most material is 2x10 for headers, right? You need a really large piece of wood because you have a gap in the structural support. And so that basically keeps your whole wall from falling down. The most important thing here is your order. Okay, you need to know that we have sills, joists. After the joist, we get our subfloor. After the subfloor, we get our sole plate. Then our sole plate, we get our studs. Studs are attached to the top plates, and on top of our top plates, we have our rafters. Warp boards, you want the crown facing down, so you have a wood where it bows. You want that facing down, and that way you can nail the ends down to where it lays flat. Biggest thing, make sure you have any permits if you need any kind of permits before you build. Now, we did this wall segment in class, and just to kind of show you a couple things on here, and this is going to tie into your review today. So we went over all of these pieces. So if you're looking at the inside, so these two arrows on the inside there, that is pointing to your trimmer studs. Okay, so your trimmer studs are going to be located right here, right? You can see where it stops at the top of your header. All right. Now your trimmer studs are going to be nailed to these things called king studs. The king studs are going to provide support to your trimmer studs. They're also going to provide support to your header and then also the top plate as well. Okay, you can see, right, king studs, trimmer studs. And then you can see our vertical framing pieces right here. Those are our actual studs. Okay, so those are studs. And then we have these horizontal pieces in between our studs, and those are called nailing plates. Okay, so they're going to provide support to your studs in the wall. Down here on the very bottom, right, that would be our sole plate because that is the bottom of our wall segment. And then on the very top of our wall segment, we have this thing called a top plate, which is pretty easy to distinguish because it's along the top. Okay. And then once again, same thing on our window. All right. You can see where we have trimmer studs attached to a king stud. All we're going to do is we're going to label this over here as well. All right. So we got our king studs on the outside of our trimmer studs. Oh, oops, it's not working. That's fine. We'll bring this over here. All right. And then we got our trimmer studs once again on the side. And then you can see these short pieces below our window down here. Once again, those short pieces, those are our cripple studs. You can see how they're really short. They're supporting our window. Like I said, it is possible to have those on the top of your window too. It just all depends on how it is framed into the wall. All right, so we got our cripple studs. And then the last thing that we have on here is this arrow pointing to the very bottom of our window. It's a pretty easy one, even though it wasn't in the notes. That's called a sill. Right? Have you ever heard of a window sill? That is the bottom ledge of our window. And that is our wall labeling. So you have two things that you need to complete today. You need to complete the wall segment. This is pretty simple. All you do is you just drag it and you put it in the arrow where you think it is. So if I thought that was a trimmer stud, I would put that right there. So you do that with all the terms, turn that in, and then you also have a framing matching. It's pretty simple. It's 19 questions. So both of those need to be turned in today as well. Let me know if you have any questions, and if not, I'll see y'all in class tomorrow.